love football? We got football. Welcome to the College Football Gridiron Report with Steve and Zach, where we dive deep into the heart of college football right here in the Sunshine State. From the Gators to the Seminoles, Hurricanes to the Knights, we've got you covered with the latest news, in-depth analysis, and plenty of hot takes on Space Coast Daily. Touchdown! Football is here, baby! The College Football Gridiron Report starts right now.
And welcome in Space Coast Daily here for the College Gridiron Report with Steve and Zach. And Steve, it's a college football season. We've had one game that's already happened already, but I'm very excited for a new season of college football to talk college football with you. And first off, how are you doing? And are you ready for some football?
I am ready. If I'm not ready, it's my own fault. We've been bombarded the last few months over the summer because this is one of the most anticipated college football seasons ever. Yeah. It's not just because of the transfer portal and NIL, but it's because of 12 teams will make the playoffs this year. So you're not out of it after week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to be a very exciting season, and I'm ready to get started.
You know, you mentioned it. It's one of the things about college football that's going to be changing. You know, you can lose once, twice, maybe even 3 times and still make the playoff. That hasn't been the case across college football in quite some time. Usually, if you lose that 1 game or 2 games, you're basically out already. So yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how the teams also kind of navigate the season, because now you're playing. If you make the playoff and you make a deep run, you're looking at playing 16, 17 games in a season now.
You better have a lot of depth on you. You better have a lot of depth on your team, and don't think controversy is going to go away. March Madness has over 60 teams participating, and people are always complaining their team didn't get in. So whoever's ranked 13, 14, 15, they're going to complain, but it's going to be a lot of fun this year.
We're very excited this year on Space Coast Daily on the College Gridiron Report with Steve and Zach. We are going to be able to give you all preview of the college football games for the upcoming week. And tomorrow, we actually have a big slate of games that are happening tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit about that here in just a little bit. But we also want you to get involved and let us know where you're watching from. We're very excited, and I know college football is a very passionate sport, so weigh in and get involved in the conversation. And who's your favorite team? Let us know. We also want to make sure we thank sponsors as well. We want to make sure we thank Urban Automotive, Health First, Eastern Florida State College for all their great support for local coverage across the Space Coast. Obviously, we're going to be talking about games that are in the state of Florida more so than we are in the national landscape of college football. But we were going to be covering everything in college football, but specifically in the state of Florida. So we're going to start off right there, Steve, and let's talk about the game that happened last Saturday, a very great game. And I don't think a lot of people really anticipated that this game was going to really be very close. But the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets come out victorious against the Florida State Seminoles in Dublin, Ireland, and it was in heartbreaking fashion after a game-winning field goal there by Aiden Burr with as the time expired, and stunned the number 10 Florida State Seminoles in Dublin and given Florida State their first loss of the season. Steve, I know you watched the game as much as everybody else did. Over 5 million viewers tuned into this game, which set a record for week 0. What was your final take, and what do you think of the Florida State Seminoles after that loss?
I'm not down on the Seminoles at this point. Anybody that watched Georgia Tech play last year, especially towards the end of the year, knew that they were starting to hit their stride and starting to play good football. It was a typical Georgia Tech game. You're not going to get a lot of possessions. I think both teams had only 7 possessions the entire game. The Seminoles only committed 1 mistake, only 1 penalty the whole game. So they did some good things, but Georgia Tech's going to win some football games. I think everybody was surprised. You're always surprised when the number 10 team in the nation loses, their first game to an unranked opponent. But there was a lot of talk about the Yellow Jackets prior to this year. So I was surprised Florida State lost, but I wasn't shocked. I think the Seminoles still have a lot of talent. They're going to win a lot of football games this year, but it wasn't the start that they wanted this year, no question about it. They're going to have to regroup in a hurry because they have another tough one coming up this weekend.
They do, and I think it was interesting to see how Florida State was going to operate this season. A lot of people were talking about that defensive line being loaded with pro prospects, and it was a very lackluster performance there by the defensive line after Georgia Tech kind of ran and had their way with Florida State and kind of controlled the line of scrimmage up front. And that's definitely something that they're going to have to work on. And when they get towards ACC play and deeper into the season, when you're playing the Clemsons and you're playing some of the North Carolinas of the world, and you get into the deep of your conference, it's all in the line play across these conferences. And I think Florida State, that's one of the areas they're definitely going to have to shore that up pretty quickly if they hope to make the college football playoff.
Yeah, and I don't know what happened to the offense. The opening possession, the Seminoles looked like a top 4 team. They just ran all over the Yellow Jackets, and after that, they really didn't do a lot on the ground. And they have such a veteran offensive line, new quarterback, and that's a question mark. And I think it was a question mark going into the season, not just because of what happened this past weekend. Is DJ the man that's going to carry them like Jordan Travis was last year? I don't know. He struggled a little bit at Clemson, then in out west, and here he is, 0-1 for the Seminoles, but it's still so early in the season. This is
right.
Because of the 12-team playoff season, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, you can lose a game or two and still be in contention for the playoffs. But like I mentioned, they're going to have to regroup in a hurry.
They will have to regroup in a hurry. And this was Georgia Tech's first win over a top 10 opponent since a 22-16 victory over the Seminoles in October of 2015. So the Yellow Jackets get the Seminoles once again. And I think for a game like this for Florida State, it's very challenging to go overseas and then play in Dublin, and then you get a loss like that. You can't let that loss beat you twice. And, like you mentioned, they're going to be playing Boston College coming up here on Monday, and they're going to be their home opener, but you cannot let a loss like that beat you twice, and it very well could if you let it. And it's not going to be easy coming back and from overseas and getting back onto the normal schedule and, dealing with the time difference and stuff. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge for Florida State, and they really need to make sure that they take Boston College seriously, because a Bill O'Brien team, they're always going to have great offense, and he's going to have that team ready. This is their first game of the season, and I'm sure they got some wrinkles that they saw that Florida State maybe had problems in that Georgia Tech game that he's probably going to try to catch them sleeping a little bit or catch them off guard with some trick plays, maybe some little wrinkles offensively and defensively.
Yeah, Boston College's quarterback has a chance to be special before he leaves college. He ran up 400 yards last year against Florida State, 305 passing and 95 rushing. If you're a UCF fan, you know the name Thomas Castellanos, came from Ware County in South Georgia. He was all over Florida State last year. And it's going to be a tough one. It'll be a tough matchup for the Seminoles. I think they'll bounce back, but it's not going to be easy.
Let's talk about a little bit of a local angle here. We talked a little bit of Florida State, and we'll come back around and we'll think about what we have for all the teams. And when they get to the college football playoff, do we think any of these teams are possibly a playoff team? Steve, you just mentioned that Florida State you don't think is completely out of it yet after that loss. Obviously, with their ties to the ACC conference, we kind of anticipate whoever wins the conference probably will make a playoff, more than likely. So Florida State's chances are still up there. They still got a great chance to be able to right the wrongs. And at least if you lose, you lost early. So and that's one of the important things I think that they need to think about. Let's go on and let's think about let's talk about this UCF game. Obviously, the game is going to be a little bit easier with taking on New Hampshire here tomorrow night. They host New Hampshire in Gus Malzahn's 4th season. And he's got a new quarterback, got a little bit of some new players due to the transfer portal. This is a team coming off a 6-7 year. What do you kind of anticipate with the UCF Knights this year? I think you anticipate maybe a win tomorrow night. I hope against New Hampshire. If
Yeah.
not, we'll probably be talking about a coaching change. But
Yeah, I
what do you
don't think we
anticipate?
can put too much stock in Thursday night's game. The Knights will have their way with New Hampshire. That's not going to be an issue. But you're right. A lot of transfers brought in is what Coach Malzahn has done each year. They need to shore up the defense. They have a good defensive line, all new linebackers. They were one of the worst rushing defensive teams in the nation last year by far. So the key there is, they brought in some good linebackers. They're going to have to stop the run. The DL is going to stop the run. You mentioned KJ Jefferson at quarterback, the all-time leading passer at Arkansas is now a Knight. How will he adapt to Coach Malzahn's style? Not a lot. I don't know that there's a lot of pressure on him around the conference because he's not talked about that much outside of the UCF arena. The Big 12 has some really good quarterbacks this year. The Knights are loaded in the backfield. They've got two 1,400-yard rushers. They got Penny Boone coming over from Toledo, and then UCF's going to score some points this year. Can they stop their opponent from scoring in key situations? That's what we all wait to see.
Yeah, with UCF, I think the schedule really lines up good for them this year compared to maybe last year. You get another year in the Big 12 conference. You have a couple teams that left, Oklahoma and Texas. So you got those big dog universities that are out of the conference now. And you look at this conference for a UCF team, and with the experience that they have at the quarterback position, I think they have a really good chance to be able to make a pretty good run at the conference this year. Much more so than last year because they have a lot of preparation and they got an extra year under their belt of what this conference is going to look like, what it's going to entail. Obviously, you got some of the other big names that are still in there. You got your Oklahoma States. I think Colorado is a new addition to the conference. I think they're going to probably be a little bit of a challenge up to the top for a UCF, which they'll see them in I think week 4 of the season, I believe. So that'll be very a tough contest. The UCF Knights will be hosting the Colorado Buffaloes, so prime time comes to town, and that'll be a very highly anticipated matchup. I feel for this season. But they take on New Hampshire tomorrow night at 7:00, and the bounce house will be bouncing. And I anticipate there's going to be a lot of excitement for the first game of the year. But obviously, it being New Hampshire, it's going to be kind of anticipated probably a blowout. And if we had running clock in college ranks, we probably would have running clock in this game.
Yeah, R.J. Harvey might run for 200 yards Thursday night. But, there's some interesting teams that are going to float to the top in the Big 12 this year. A lot of people are picking Utah to win the conference, a new team. Arizona, maybe the best quarterback in the conference now. It's just Shador. It's going to be a really interesting year in the Big 12 this year. It is, I think, without question, the most competitive league amongst each other. If you go back the last 10 years, 46% of the games, interconference games, were decided by one score or less. So that's how tough the conference is.
In terms of UCF and in terms, we're entering Gus Malzahn's 4th year. And obviously they went 6-7 last year. You're in a new conference. Does the seat get warm at all this season? Is there any chance for that possibly happening? I mean, by the 4th year, this is usually when you can start judging a coach based upon his performance. A lot of the players that are in his program right now are his players. Mm-hmm. Is there any chance for things to head south this year for UCF if things don't start going well? Is the seat getting a little hot for him?
There's always that chance, but I don't see it right now. College football has changed so much. You'd recruit a solid class, a really good freshman class, and you say, man, I can't wait till these kids become, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And it's not that way anymore. But yeah, if they lose to some teams like that they shouldn't lose to, you're always going to have some chirping from the outside. But I think he's pretty secure right now. Another 500 year. I think he's going to be okay, but that's not what UCF wants to do in the future. Come year 3 and year 4, if they still hover around the middle of the pack, Something's got to give, but I wouldn't say he's on the hot seat this year. Unless something drastically happens throughout the course of the year. And I don't see that happening. There's too much talent on this team for them to struggle week in and week out.
I think it's going to be very imperative that they try to make a bowl game this year.
Yeah.
With that schedule, if you don't make a bowl game, then I think you're going to start hearing people chirp a little bit, especially if when you got a schedule like that, you're just trying to get 6 wins. And you know, how the direction of the program and momentum is so important, especially in Florida when you're trying to win these recruits and trying to get in the age of the transfer portal. I think it's going to be so important that he at least tries to get to a bowl game this year and a little bit more. And you know what? They play the Florida Gators this year, and that game's going to be at night, as I understand it, in the swamp.
Yeah.
If you can go into the swamp and get a victory there, which who knows what Florida is going to look like here. We'll talk a little bit about them here in just a little bit. But you go into the swamp and you got to go and get a victory out of there. From a bragging standpoint and from just an optics standpoint, it'd be so huge for UCF and they get to get a victory in the swamp because of just the amount of attention that Florida commands. And, I think that would, you tell me. I think it would be the momentum for UCF would be huge, just from in-state level, if you could go into the swamp and try to get a victory there.
Yeah, it'd be a huge win for the Knights. It'd be devastating for the Gators to lose to UCF, but they lost to them a few years ago in the bowl game, but that was different. Players opt out of games and injuries occur. But yeah, the UCF Florida game is going to be a lot of fun in a few weeks. But first things first, the Knights have to do what they should do, which is win football games. They easily, they reached a bowl game last year. They are a better football team this year than last year, personnel-wise. I don't think there's any question at all. So I'd be shocked right now if they don't reach a bowl game.
And you got a great quarterback, too, that you'd be able to utilize, too.
Yeah.
KJ Jefferson's got a lot of experience in the SEC. He's played Florida before, so I don't think any environment or any type of game is going to be too much for him after playing in the SEC. So you got a great quarterback to be able to, get some big wins against some of these powerhouse schools. That a quarterback that's not going to be intimidated and who's a gamer and a load to bring down too. Probably one of the hardest quarterbacks to bring down in college football right now.
Yeah, he's a big boy.
Let's move on, and then this is the big one right here that we got. The Miami Hurricanes visit the Florida Gators in this game. Miami Hurricanes are a 2-point favorite in this game, surprisingly, over the Florida Gators. What do you think? What do you anticipate about this game, and what do you think what's going to come out of these two schools this year?
Ask me that question next week after they play. It is a you pick 'em game. You can make a strong case for either team.
Yeah.
Is Cam Ward the answer for the Hurricanes? Yeah, they really haven't done it consistently over the last few years, and I don't know if Ward is the one that's going to get them to the top, get them to where they want to be. I think we'll know more after this weekend, but it's just going to be a great matchup. The electricity, in Gainesville, it's just going to be a lot of fun.
I think I'm kind of surprised that the line has Miami as a favorite. I understand that Miami's got a lot of talent, but this is in the swamp. And the fact that the Gators are an underdog in their home opener kind of
Mhm.
blows my mind a little bit that they would be in that position. But um, this is a very important year for both of these teams, and both coaches, Mario Cristobal and Billy Napier, are heading into their third season right now. And I think whoever loses this game, there's going to be a lot of people in the fan base that are going to
Mhm.
be, calling for one of their heads. Whoever loses this game, I think you're already starting to kind of anticipate and kind of sense that it's going to be probably one of those years
Yeah.
for one of these schools. One of these guys is going to fall into the chocolate river, if you will, and they're going to be lost because the romanticism and the novelty of between these coaches, I think, is over. These schools want to win now,
Yeah.
and both of these programs have been kind of struggling lately in terms of their overall perception of what they anticipate that their programs are, coming to grips with how some of the results have been lately. And for Florida, it's been a rough couple years, and
Yeah.
people are getting impatient. And I think a lot, like we just talked about it a little bit earlier, momentum in this state and making sure that you are one of the top places that recruits want to go to. Florida's losing that a little bit. I
Yeah.
think Florida had a much more prestige 3 or 4 years ago than it does now. Florida State's kind of that hot team right now that a lot of people are
Mhm.
talking about, a lot of people want to go to, and UCF even for that matter is
Yeah.
kind of a popular team. But both of these schools, I think, um, big years for both of these coaches, and I think whoever gets a win in this game is going to set themselves up for the rest good for the rest of the year. But if you lose this game, it's just it, people are going
Yeah.
to start chirping, and
They
people in the
will.
fan base are very impatient.
Yeah, and it's a real interesting matchup. Two different teams, two different conferences, and it really shows the difference in the conferences. A lot of people are talking about Miami as a possible title contender in the ACC. Nobody's talking about the Gators at all in the SEC.
Mm-mm.
Yet it's almost a pick 'em game. So yeah, if the Gators lose and Mertz plays average, everybody's going to want to see the freshman play the following week. Everybody loves the player, the big name players that haven't played a snap yet. Show me the freshmen. But um, I like Florida this weekend. I just think they're going to come out and win. They're at home, and they're going to obviously have the crowd behind them. Now there will be a number of Hurricane fans there, but nowhere near what the Gators will have at home. It's going to be packed house. It's going to be fun to watch.
When you look at Miami, what do you anticipate for Miami this year? You mentioned the ACC here, and obviously you got Florida the first week, and you got Florida A&M, Ball State, and then at USF. I don't think I think people can't sleep on USF this year.
Yeah,
They're a team that gave Alabama all they could handle last year, and we saw what Alabama did last year. And I think people think back to that Alabama team. A lot of people weren't too high on them because of that USF game that they had
right.
when they went into Tampa and they were struggling with the Bulls. What do you anticipate with the Hurricanes this year? Do you think this is a team that is a legitimate contender for the ACC?
I'll let you know Sunday morning.
They definitely have a
I,
great quarterback, and
I
Cam Ward is going to be a guy that's going to be fun to watch. I think probably one of
yeah,
the most exciting quarterbacks maybe to watch here this season
yeah,
in the state of Florida amongst all the teams. I mean, a guy who
yeah,
is extremely accomplished at his time at Washington State comes here to Miami, could have gone pro. A lot of people
yeah,
thought he might have actually have gone to the draft and been a
yeah,
pretty high pick if he so chose, but he chose to go back to college. Obviously, in the days of NIL, probably was a little bit a little incentive there to be able to come back and play some college
yeah,
football for an extra year. That probably helped. If I don't think if the NIL and thing was around, I think he probably would have gone pro. But
yeah.
he's going to be a fun one to watch. I'm really looking forward to watching him play in Miami, and I think the people in Miami are really excited about him.
Yeah, no, I think the Canes have a chance to be a top 2 or 3 team in the conference. Any one of those spots, I think Clemson's going to take a step up. They've been down a little bit. I think they're going to be a little better than they have been in the past. Florida State is way too early to count them out. I think it's probably a 3-horse race between those three.
Yeah.
But there's some others that, and in a way, the ACC reminds me of the Big 12 because the middle of the pack, there are very few teams in the ACC that you can say, okay, this is going to be an easy win. It's just too much. It's just too competitive, too much balance for the most part in the ACC. But yeah, Miami they've got the talent this year. If Ward has the season like he's capable of, as you mentioned, there's no reason why they can't win it all. But I really think we'll know more after Saturday, even though it's only week 1. I think we'll have a better feel for how Miami's going to be this year.
I'm kind of anticipating. I look at their schedule and I'm seeing about a 9-3 season for Miami. I think they can get to. I think 9 wins is about the ceiling for this team. There's some big games. Obviously, that Georgia Tech game that they got to go to now looks a little bit more challenging. Depending on Haynes King plays that day. You got Florida State in your house. That'll be a fun one on October 26th. That'll be the Halloween game. So you get the Seminoles in your house for that game. The atmosphere in that game is going to be insane. Can't imagine what that's going to be like. At Louisville is going to be a little bit of a challenge too. And I look at the rest of the schedule, and I mean it's very workable. I mean, you got Virginia Tech at Cal, which is kind of a unique one with Cal and Stanford now in the conference.
I know.
I can't wrap my mind around having to go all the way to the West Coast and play Cal or Stanford, but here we are. Then you got at Louisville, home for Florida State, home for Duke. Keep an eye on Duke, maybe with a familiar face at Duke with Manny Diaz being the head coach there. Used to be the Miami coach. At Georgia Tech and home for Wake and at Syracuse. So pretty workable schedule in my opinion, but we'll see how they play. Again, you got to play the games, and we can try to make projections right now about how people are going to look. But you look at that on that space, and you're like, Miami can work with that. I mean, that's
they're going to win a lot of games this year. How many? Obviously, that's to be determined, but they have the opportunity to win a boatload of games.
They got a great quarterback too to be able to lead them there. We take a look at the Florida Gators. The Florida Gators, like we mentioned, is going to be a pretty challenging year for them. What do you anticipate with the Florida Gators this year? I know you're going to say Sunday again.
Yeah. Well, anytime you lose your number 1 running back, he transfers. That's tough. And Johnson had a good year. He rushed the now number 1 Montrell Johnson rushed for a little over 800 yards last year. And he's going to have a big time year, but that's a big deal to lose Etienne. And they've got a tough schedule. The Gators have a very difficult schedule, to say the least. So, I'll tell you Sunday morning, but it's
just look at that schedule.
Reaching a bowl game this year, that would be my goal if I'm a Gator fan. I want to win a half a dozen games and make a bowl game, and I'll be happy. When you look at that schedule and look at what they've lost, it's going to be challenging.
They need to get their wins now, early on in the season. If you look at the schedule, and our viewers are looking at that schedule right now. Home for Miami, home for Stanford next week, home for A&M, then you're at Mississippi State, home for UCF, at Tennessee. This is where it gets down really challenging road. Home for Kentucky, home for Georgia, at Texas, home for LSU, home for Ole Miss, and at Florida State. I mean,
that's a brutal second half.
Kentucky could be ranked by the time that you play that game too. I mean, that's probably going to be a pretty good Kentucky team as well. So you're talking about in that little short from November 2nd, you're taking on number 1 Georgia until November 30th. You have 5 games right there. All the teams you play are in the top 15. Yeah. I mean, that's
that is brutal. Anyway, you look at, you try to make something positive out of that, but you can't. Said you were right a minute ago. The Gators are going to have to win heavy up front.
Yes.
To reach a bowl game this year.
That's why I think there's so much pressure on Napier to win this game to start off with, because if you lose this game, obviously you got Stanford next week, which should be a win.
Oh yeah.
But then you got home for A&M, and that's not going to be no slouch either.
Yeah, new coach with A&M, Eccles. Yeah, he's good.
Yeah.
That'll be a challenge.
I mean, if you lose to Miami and then you lost to A&M, I think you're going to start hearing people already start chirping. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
Napier might not even make the UCF game at that point because
I,
people are just going to
you
be.
may you may be right. Yeah,
But it I've always liked Coach Napier. I mean, I think he's
yeah,
brought a certain level of discipline to the Florida Gators that has been, I think, kind of a myth over the
yeah.
last few years for them.
Hmm.
But he has been, and he's made mention to this on some of his press conferences. The days and age of college football have been changing, and
Yeah,
he's had to adjust on the fly to a lot of that. But in Florida, you're only as good as your next replacement, and I think he's there's a lot of opportunities, and there's a lot of people who want that job. That if he
yeah.
goes out there and he doesn't do what they need him to do, there's a bunch of other people that would come and take that job in a heartbeat because it's one of the best jobs that you probably can have in college football.
Yeah, the Gators need to win football games. That's what they have done in the past. And if you don't win football games in Gainesville, you're right. You're not going to last a real long time.
Let's we're circling back around, and we talked a little bit about the season. Let's talk Florida State. Florida State's a team that with Mike Norvell, they're a team I think we anticipate they're going to have a pretty good year.
Yeah.
A college football playoff contender, I think we have, and I think they're probably, based upon everything that we've said, maybe Miami is about the only other team, maybe in the state of Florida, that we kind of anticipate could be challenging for a playoff spot. Am I right in that understanding?
Yeah, well, the ACC champ's going to make the playoffs, and I wouldn't disregard Clemson yet because I really do think they're going to be better than they were last year.
Yeah.
But on paper, even though Florida State lost, it's probably the Seminoles and Hurricanes, and one of the two.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if they win the conference, one of the two will make the playoffs. But,
Let's
there's just
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
no. I was just saying, I mentioned it a minute ago, the competitive balance in the conference. Don't be surprised if that champion has 2 or 3 losses.
Fun little segment we're going to do here as we get ready to close out the show, and we want to thank everybody here for tuning in on the College Gridiron Report with Steve and Zach. Steve, we're gonna do 6 games here, and we're gonna
All
have some
right.
fun, and we're gonna keep a record of this for the whole entire year. Okay, so
I got it. I'm ready. I got my pen in hand and paper. I'm ready to write.
okay, all right. So we're gonna start off with a couple of the local teams. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit about this game here. We just talked a little bit about the Florida Gators in Miami. That's obviously one of the pick'em games. So
Yeah.
we're going to start off with this one. Who you got between Florida and Miami? I think you kind of mentioned it before, but you can give your take on why you think.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Gators. Number one, they're at home. They've got the crowd behind them. There's just a tremendous amount of excitement. Gainesville will be rocking. New quarterback at Miami, great quarterback, but a new quarterback. He'll put up some numbers. But I just think Florida is going to win the football game. I think it's more important for Florida to win than Miami. The Canes are going to win a lot of games this year. I think they're going to get better. But it's going to be a challenge, as we talked about a few minutes ago, with the Gators' schedule. I think it's a hugely important game for Florida to win, and I think they'll do so.
Taking the Florida Gators. So, okay, I'm going to go. Here we go. We got our first disagreement. I'm going to take the Miami Hurricanes in this one.
All right.
I think with Cam Ward, I think with the experience at the quarterback position, Graham Mertz is very experienced as well. But I just like the athleticism and the dual threat ability of Cam Ward can really cause a lot of havoc for the Florida Gators. And this is a 3:30 p.m. game. It's not a night game in the Swamp,
Yeah.
which I think is good for Miami. But I think in a game like this, I think Miami's going to thrive, and I think the Hurricanes are going to come out victorious in this one. Let's talk about another one, and that's in the state of Florida. We have the Florida State Seminoles hosting the Golden Eagles. Who do you got in this one? And you anticipate Florida?
Because the Seminoles last year handled them for 3 quarters, and then Boston College, had plenty of starts last year. He's going to be dynamite this year. But I just don't see. Hopefully, if you're a Seminoles fan, they'll do it more often. But that's going to be a close football game. I'm going to go with Florida State, but it's one of those that if Boston College wins, I'm not going to be shocked.
I I didn't know you were going to do that. I thought maybe you might go Boston College there.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I can't see Florida State losing 2 games in a row.
Yeah.
I mean, I can, I guess. I mean, especially you have jet lag coming back and getting back to use of the time frame. It's a Monday night game. Phil Campbell is going to be popping, and
Yeah.
I don't see Florida State just being out of. If they lose that game to Boston College, they're out of the playoff. I mean, and then do you do that in the first 2 weeks of the season? You lose your first 2 games. Just
That'd be
can't see
tough.
that. There's too much talent across the board,
Yeah.
and I just don't see that happening. I do think it'll be very close, though. I think it's going to come
Yeah.
down to the wire. But
Yeah.
I think the atmosphere at Florida State will be the difference, and I think Florida State will become victorious. So we'll agree on that one.
Yep.
All right, let's go. Let's move on to a next game that is going to be a lot of people are going to be watching, and not anything to do with any in Florida, but it is a regional matchup between the Clemson Tigers and the Georgia Bulldogs. What do you anticipate happening here between these two? I think Clemson is a massive underdog in this game. I think they're a 14-point underdog right now in this matchup. What do you see happening here?
2 words: Carson Beck. He will be the Heisman Trophy winner this year. Georgia Bulldogs quarterback. You heard it first right here. And I talked earlier about how impressed I've been with Clemson during the offseason, and I think they are going to be better, but Georgia's loaded. I don't know that Georgia's quite as deep as they have been the last couple of years, but they have so much talent. Carson Beck, a tremendous quarterback, good size. He's primed to have another big-time year. He lost some key receivers, but Georgia reloads. They don't rebuild. I think the Bulldogs are going to win the football game. They may not be the best team in the SEC this year, but they are going to be the best team when they play Clemson.
This is a tough one because I think Clemson's going to be much better than people think this year. Dabo Swinney, I think, has got a fire under him right now that he really wants to really likes this team. And I think they, anything I know about Dabo Swinney and Clemson, it was just a few short years ago, it was between them and Alabama going back and forth and, jockeying for position in the college football landscape. And both of those teams were, they were the it schools. And I think Clemson's kind of, here the last couple of years has kind of tailed off a little bit. They come back down to reality ever since Trevor Lawrence left, and they haven't been right since a little bit. Yeah. But I would not be surprised if Clemson goes into Mercedes-Benz Stadium and comes out with a victory. Would not be surprised. It's a first week game. You don't know what you're going to be dealing with a Georgia team. Maybe getting a little bit of a big head. Maybe getting to Georgia a little bit. But it's one of those games where if you lose it, you're still not out of it. Right. And I think it means a lot more to Clemson right now than it does to Georgia. Pick Georgia. I went into this. I thought I was going to pick Clemson, but it is Georgia. It is in it at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. They have a loaded team. They got ETN at running back. They got Carson Beck. They're just so loaded at every position. I'm going to take Georgia, but I do think it's going to be a close game. And that'll be a really good game. That's 12 p.m. on ABC. So that'll be a really fun game to watch. And that'll kick off our college football Saturday with a top 15 matchup right out of the gate. That'll be really fun and exciting. All right. So we're going to move on. We got a next game, which this one is kind of I wanted to choose this game for us because I think it's kind of an interesting matchup standpoint. It's tomorrow night. And it's between the Colorado Buffaloes and the North Dakota State Bison. So between the Buffaloes and the Bison, there's been a little fun back and forth on social media. Who's what actually is a bison compared to a buffalo? And people of North Dakota State actually say that the way Colorado comes out with their mascot, that's actually a bison. That's not a buffalo because based upon their the definition of a buffalo and stuff. So it's kind of a little fun competition. This is a hard matchup for Colorado in week one. and the college football season. And I got to imagine, Deion Sanders probably is not too thrilled to be having a North Dakota State coming to town for what they were capable of doing.
Yeah.
So, what do you got going on in this matchup? This is tomorrow night, North Dakota State visiting Colorado.
Well, I think conventional wisdom says go with Colorado. Shedeur Sanders, one of the top quarterbacks in the country. Travis Hunter does it all for Colorado. The offensive line for Colorado was atrocious last year. Supposedly it's been rebuilt, but Florida State supposedly had a tremendous offensive line, and it didn't work out too well for them last weekend. But I can't pick against Colorado. I think they brought in 40-something transfers again this year, so we don't really know what kind of team Colorado's going to have, but we know about their quarterback and we know about their receiver. I'm going to go with Colorado in what's going to be a fun game to watch. Maybe a lot of points scored. Maybe a really exciting 54-52 game. It could be crazy, but I'm going to go with Colorado.
I think North Dakota State's actually going to try to shorten the game a little bit and utilize that kind of power run game and try to keep Colorado's offense off the field. I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to take the upset in this one. I'm going to take North Dakota State. I like what North Dakota State has on paper to be able to go in and maybe pull off an upset. And they do have a new first-year head coach this season. North Dakota State does. After the head coach at North Dakota State then went to be an assistant coach at or a coordinator down at Northwestern, which is kind of a surprise. But I really like how North Dakota State plays is going to be much different than how Colorado is going to play. And with all those transfers, the first week of the season, under the lights, all the stuff off the field is completely gone now when you're on the field. And I think it's going to get down to X's and O's and execution. And I think when you look up front, I like North Dakota State in the trenches a little bit more than I like Colorado. And I think there's so much inexperience up front for them on both sides of the ball. I think that's going to take a little time for them to gel. I mean, this is a team in Colorado that led the nation in giving up sacks. Yeah. And are you going to be able to give Shedeur Sanders enough time in the backfield? And North Dakota State, they're kind of those blue collar, kind of lunch pail type players that come and they do the grunt work and they'll do what they need to do to come out with a victory, to play good technique and good discipline. And I think that could be the difference in this game. And I'm going to take North Dakota State. And funny, Steve, I don't think I told you this yet, but I'm actually going to the Nebraska-Colorado game next week. So I'm actually kind of hoping that Colorado actually kind of wins that game because it's actually better for Nebraska's standpoint to be there. But I mean, there's just so much chatter with Colorado right now. Everything what they do with the journalists and all this other stuff. I just I think it's going to be North Dakota State in this one.
Yeah, no, it's a good pick. Yeah, you may be right. I'm going the other way, but I think it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, it'd be a good game. All right, final one, and we'll continue going on here for Notre Dame at Texas A&M. Mike Elko's first game with the Aggies. Going to be at Kyle Field hosting the Irish. This one's going to be a fun one. And this one's going to be on ABC at night at 7:30. This is the one that Kirk Herbstreit and Fowler are going to be on for this game. Yeah. So Texas A&M is a 3-point favorite. Very surprising for that. Notre Dame, number 7 on the season, and Texas A&M, number 20. A&M's the favorite. Who you got?
That's a tough one. I'm like you. I'm surprised that A&M is a favorite. They've underperformed the last few years. Obviously, with a new coach, a new system, the faithful from A&M are expecting a turnaround, and it may start this weekend. And I think it might. I'm going to go with Texas A&M at home. I think the 12th man is going to be the difference. The fans in the stand are going to be the difference. You won't say that very often, but I like Notre Dame. They're going to win. That's all they do is they're an independent. They pick their schedule basically, and they win football games. But I like Texas A&M. I like the new coach. I like the excitement surrounding Week 1. You've got one of the top teams in the country coming to your place, and Notre Dame will bring a big crowd. They have big crowds wherever they go. So although it will be a home field advantage for Texas A&M, there will be a lot Irish people there. But I think A&M, in my mind, it would be an upset if A&M wins. But as you mentioned, they're favorites. I don't know how, but they're favorites. But I'm going to go with Texas A&M.
I'm going to take Notre Dame. I'm going to take the continuity and Marcus
Yeah.
Freeman and everything he's got going with an important year for Notre Dame and a chance for them to get into that college football playoff. You talk about a team that maybe has the best road to maybe try to make a playoff. It's a Notre Dame, I think, with a team that's considered like an independent. I think the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I think I like the experience. Mike Elko's first game. There's going to be some type of first game jitters with trying to get familiarized with your team and knowing what you got. I think Notre Dame knows what they have, and they're going to be able to go into Kyle Field and come out with a victory. And I'm kind of surprised, like you said, that A&M is a favorite. Notre Dame is the 7th ranked team. But Kyle Field will be popping, and it's going to be hopping all night. And one of the loudest and greatest environments of college football is Kyle Field at night. So that's going to be a fun atmosphere. And I'm going to take Notre Dame in that one. All right. And then the last one, I know I said the other one was the last one. This is the last one. This is the pick 6. Mm-hmm. So this is the final one. This is one our own Terry Spain's going to be going to, and it's going to be a great game as the USC Trojans and the LSU Tigers square off at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. Who do you got in this one?
I don't care how bad
LSU's a 4-point favorite. So
what's that? Who is?
LSU's a 4-point favorite.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't care how bad LSU's defense was last year and the fact that they lost their Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. I was born in Louisiana. I lived in New Orleans. Tigers, LSU all the way. Their defense will be vastly improved. It has to be. Tigers are going to score some points. It's going to be wild. That place will be rocking. I'm going with LSU. I think Southern Cal is going to be pretty good this year. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to be very good this year, but I just like LSU out to get out of the gate to win week 1.
I think with USC's defense, that was a major problem for them last year. I think you got 2 teams here this year that are trying to do better on defense. Yeah. And I like the moves that USC made in the offseason. However, you're going up against an LSU team. There's going to be talent on the offense side of the ball. That's going to be quite the challenge. And I am going to go with you on that one. I'm going to go with LSU in this game. Very important year here for Coach Kelly in this season. And I think even for USC, it's also an important year. You're heading into a new conference this year. A lot of people kind of expect you to kind of do some things this year in that conference. Yeah. But I think it will be a little bit of a challenge there for USC and too much for them to handle. SEC and LSU is going to be one of the best teams in the SEC this year. So I'm taking the Tigers. LSU, they thrive in those games too. Like these big matchups where you're the only matchup on TV. I mean, they're going to thrive in that environment. This is what they live for. They do this all the time in the SEC. They're one of the top programs in the country for a reason, and that'll be a fun one.
That game's
going to be that game will be Sunday night on ABC, so that'll be the sole game on the night.
Yeah.
All right, Steve. Great. This was a little bit of a longer episode than what we're normally going to do, but we have all the previews of all the teams, so this one was probably going to be our longest episode that we have. So for those at home. It's not always going to be this long. We're going to keep it pretty piffy and pretty to the point. But at the beginning, this is kind of our beginning of the season type edition for the podcast. So we'll be here next week. We'll preview the week 2 matchups and a recap of some of the week 1 matchups that we had for this year. And Steve, I'm very excited to be able to do this with you again, and looking forward to another great year of college football and doing this podcast with you. So thank you.
Same here, Zach. I always enjoy talking college football with you. Had so much fun today. Let's do it again next week.
Absolutely. Well, for Steve Wilson, for Zach Clark here for the College Gridiron Report with Steve and Zach. Thank you, everybody, here for tuning in. We want to make sure we thank our sponsors, Urban Automotive, Health First, Eastern Florida State College, All Points for all their great sponsorship for local high school sports and college sports, for that matter, too, for what they do in and around the area. So thank you for everybody here for tuning in. And for Zach Clark, Space Coast Daily, for Steve Wilson, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week on the next podcast.
Space Coast Daily is Brevard's most trusted news. Through spacecoastdaily.com and Space Coast Daily's social media reach, hundreds of thousands of people stay informed every day. Through Space Coast Daily's unmatched digital reach with the Space Coast Daily's direct mail newspaper and Space Coast Daily the magazine in print, our loyal and engaged viewers enjoy free local news they can trust every day, and all at no charge thanks to our successful advertising clients, and also at our special events at Space Coast Daily Park in Vieira, where hundreds of thousands of people see our clients' advertisements. Call today to get your message seen on Space Coast Daily and take your business to new heights. Get launched with Space Coast Daily. Call 321-323-4460 today.